You never know who the 20 are as well. I was once doing an event, and just as one does, a big public event, and talking to people. And my rule of thumb is be nice to everybody, no matter what, especially in a public event. And at the end, I got a call from two people. One was from Steve Jobs' office, and the other was from Nikki Drexler from the Gap, his office, from Old Navy and the Gap, who he was the CEO at that time. And in both cases, they were just two guys in baseball caps that I was talking to at an event and had no idea who they were. And they were just impressed both with the event and then also with the fact that our team was so friendly.
That's a really good story, actually. Like you said, be nice to everybody, and yeah, that's amazing. Well, can you tell us what the Emmy is about, and is it possible to get a close-up of it? Because I think this is as close as I'm ever going to get to seeing one. Like, seeing one that's kind of more, wow. That is very, very spectacular.
They're very fun.
So what's the story behind the Emmy?
So there's one in my husband's office and one in my office, and it kind of ties into our business. We actually do two things that are crazily related, although it sounds kind of weird when we say it, but we write for television. And we also have this PR company. And to us, that makes complete sense because everything we do is very story-driven. So we don't deal with kind of abstracts. Everything we deal is very much based on the needs of our audience, the problems that we're trying to solve, and the values that relate to them. And then that helps us create television programming that is really resonant with the audience that we're trying to reach. And then with our PR clients, what we do is we take that same deep level of understanding and archetypes and how people relate to things and human struggle and what we need to believe and move forward in a world that we hope is better, that we hope is making it, that we're making a contribution to something better, even through a purchase, and we infuse that through all of our PR efforts. So we created, there was a group of scientists who were very concerned about the fact that girls were not staying engaged in science past a certain age. And they asked us to create a television show that would speak to girls specifically. And it airs throughout the American public, on various channels throughout the American Public Television Network. And we were really honored in the most recent Emmy Awards. We were awarded a regional Emmy Award for the show. And we won for Best Special and also for outstanding song, and my husband wrote the lyrics for the song.
Oh, wow!
What's the TV show called?
It's called Scientastic.
Oh, okay.
As in science and fantastic.
So has it been running for very long? Scientastic.
Well, it's a special, and we very much hope that it gets picked up. So it's airing now on various PBS stations in the U.S., and our hope is that the National Science Foundation will fund it so that we can take it to full series.
Okay.
Wow. Fantastic.
Is it a documentary type show, or is it
it's a story-driven show?
Okay,
it's a story-driven show. So it's a comedy with some really big dramatic moments with singing and dancing, things that will appeal to girls. But it kind of takes issues that girls wrestle with. In this case, it's about bullying and how she actually uses science to objectify her problem and to kind of help deal with it and to move her way through it.
Bit of a late intro for anyone that's watching this. So welcome to today's webinar. My name is Bobby Lynn, and I'm a success manager at Veloso. Veloso is a video production community. Joining us today is we've got David, who's hosting the webinar, and I'll let him introduce Susan.
Welcome to our event today, which is about how to define your target audience. And it's with great pleasure joining us today. We have Susan McLennan. Susan is the co-founder of Reimagine PR in Toronto, And she's also the Happy Award winner of an Emmy, which we're just proudly able to see. So Susan specializes in brand storytelling. She's also a marketer and has a background in TV production. Susan has created and written television shows, which have broadcast worldwide, and she's also offers fully exclusive PR and has strategy management, tactical advertising services in media relations and corporate PR, content marketing. And she's worked with some of the top media outlets in the world, including the New York Times, the Today Show, and also been on Ellen. Is that correct? Or
we've had many guests on Ellen. I have not been on Ellen, but we've had guests on Ellen.
Fantastic. So, Susan, could you tell us a little bit about
let's not forget, we most recently learned an Emmy Award winner. Also.
Yeah.
The show that we created won an award, and my husband won a special Emmy as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So could you tell us a little bit about what brand storytelling is and why it's so important?
Yeah, I think, from the time that we're children, stories really resonate with us. That's how we learn everything. It's how we learn what works in the world, what doesn't work in the world, everything that we want to be, everything that we don't want to be. And so from a very, from before the point that we can even make sense of the world, our brains are learning things through story. So there are a few principles that we operate on, and one of them is that people value what they discover more than what you tell them. I can tell you all kinds of things about myself, but through a story, you actually get to discover something that I'm going to tell you. I can go to a party and say to you, I am so funny. I am hilarious. You're going to love me. And I can guarantee that you're going to sit there and think I'm an idiot, right? But if I tell you a joke and I'm gracious and I give you the chance to speak and I do all of those things, you're going to think, oh, she's a pretty funny, awesome person. So it comes back to, again, that people value what they discover more than what you tell them. And they also value the opportunity to co-create something. And in storytelling, you're actually engaging the brain. If I tell you, believe this, think this, do this, you are not necessarily engaged. You are given, you are told what to think, and your brain is going to sit back and say, I don't know about that. But with story, your brain is filling in the blanks. You're actually co-creating, you're participating. And those two factors really make for a much rounder, more resonant experience. And that's what brand storytelling is about. It's about not telling people what to think. It's really about giving them the opportunity to co-create and discover.
Wow, that's incredible. So is this a new concept? Is this a new way of marketing? Or
I think, with the advent of social media, that people have been looking for more authentic communication. I think everybody realized that the old way of pushing out doesn't work. And I think there are a few of us who are in this field who are really good storytellers, who care about storytelling and who believe that this is the way things are. And I think, smarter brands have moved or are moving in that direction.
Great answers. And I think a lot of us will get a lot out of that understanding of how important it is to tell a story and engage the audience within the story. How would you define the target audience?
It's really interesting. We start with a process that looks at your values, because we don't think it's what the pieces of you, like what how old you are, demographic information. We think that's secondary.
Right.
What we think is important is what you believe and what you stand for. The things that make you transcend what your own needs and your own concerns, because that's what forms community, right? And that's what gets us out of bed in the morning. When we can tap and when we can understand what your values are, then we can get a much better sense of, and also what you think your audience's values are. So we very much work in the realm of Joseph Campbell, who did a lot of work around myths and heroes. And more recently, there's a very good book called Story Wars. I actually disagree with some of its premise, but Jonas Sachs is the author, and it's a good book. And it kind of builds on the concept of Joseph Campbell's work and the power of myth and archetypes and what a hero is, and kind of makes it more relevant for a marketing world. And I was saying to John, I was interviewing him once, and I said, damn it, you wrote the book I wanted to write. So, but it very much is in line with our philosophy, which is you choose your values, you understand deeply who you are and what you stand for, the things that you believe in that are bigger than you. Right. And you understand the things that are bigger than your audience and the values that matter most to them, and the values that your values that will resonate with them. And really that's the intersection. What are the values that you hold that will resonate most deeply with the people that matter most to you? And out of that, you can actually choose your brand archetype. And there are a select number of archetypes, but you can choose kind of your hero, the hero that you would see yourself in the world. And from there, it's much easier to find your tone. You know, are you going to use humor? Does humor make sense for you? For some people it does. For some people it doesn't. For some banks, that's an absolute no-no. For other banks, that are defining themselves as outliers, that's an absolute way to define themselves as being different. So I think that's a really good way of going about it, is really understanding your values.
So do you think that the values actually evolve from the personal and then become born into the brand? And
all businesses...
Is it different to the brand values to the personal values? Is there a big difference there, or...?
It depends on the company, and it depends on the size and how long the company's been around, because all businesses, all companies are a collection of people. And I think businesses get into real trouble when they think of themselves as this, I think the American notion that a corporation is a legal person is a real problem, because what it is it's a collection of people who believe certain things, and those values will evolve over time, and they will be determined by your circumstance. So, Coca-Cola has definite human rights issues, and at the same time, they were really a leader in the Black civil rights movement, because they were based in Atlanta, and they saw what was going on, and they made a commitment. In fact, I think when Martin Luther King was assassinated, I think they even may have brought his widow to the scene, or his body home, or something like that, and they took a stand on, that's not to say that they don't have many other challenges, but your brand values will be very much determined by where things are and who's at the top. So you had a very different set of values, I think. Well, the brand values remain the same, although you will see them evolve into something slightly different when you had, say, Steve Jobs at the helm of Apple. And then now, as it is with Tim Cook, who is making some very definitive human rights statements, although even with his toes in the water, we're not barreling head first there, but he's saying, no, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. He's an openly gay man who is saying, hey, we are inclusive. We are moving out of this because this does not reflect. So I think there is always, if a company is true to itself, it recognizes that we are a collection of people, and those values must be infused through the organization. And not just from the top down, sometimes from the bottom up. Sometimes something can happen within your community that will then inform, that will then make its way up through the chain and infuse people, because the story will have touched them, or a person will have touched them.
Okay. You talked about archetype. So you talked about what the personality is and what the company believes in. And you also talked about part of that is understanding what your customers believe in. And so for businesses that are just starting out, so let's say small to medium-sized businesses, obviously they really strongly believe in something, and that's why they're charging, especially in today's market. There are a lot of startups around the world. And so there's this big startup movement where the entrepreneurs really believe in what they're doing. They're inspired by these other innovators like Steve Jobs. But a lot of them, I guess, don't really fully understand what their customers believe in. And so I guess what you're saying is try to understand that. Do you have any advice, any tips on how they go about doing that? Obviously, there are many different personality types.
Yeah.
But, how do they develop?
I don't think you worry about personality types. I really think that comes secondary, as a secondary concern. I think you worry about values, and I think you ask people. That's one way. One of the things is through conversation or through surveys, ask them about the issues that matter to them. You can even send them lists of attributes and of values, and say, well, which of these matter most to you? And which do you see in us? If you have existing customers, never be afraid to ask your customers anything. In my world, I think people do really value the opportunity to be part of your growth, to inform who you are, to add meaningful feedback. So you can ask a select group of people. And the other thing is, if you don't have customers yet, decide who you want to have your customer. The way we've built our business is we are very we have a vision of the world, and we're not willing to take on people who aren't working towards something that is inclusive and kind and better. So if we have people who are just about making a fast buck and leaving people behind, and who are anti-immigrant or whatever, or who are anti-gay, we're not interested in working with them. We're just not. So we're very upfront about who we want to be in the world that we see.
Why is that so important to you? Or do you think why is social justice? Do you think social justice is really important for businesses today, or is this something that's been important for a long time?
I think there are a few different reasons. In a way, it used to be a marketing tool. It used to be but I think one of the things that happened was that we realized that we spend a lot of time at work. That's where we meet our friends. It's where we meet our mates. If we don't do that online, that's really the huge amount of time. And I think when you are, for us, our everything that we do is about making other people care about the things that we believe in. And I couldn't sell something if I didn't think that this was something worth believing in. I just couldn't do it.
Sure.
And in fact, early on, we would try and take on clients and well, it's not really a fit. It's not really what we believe in, but all right. And we've determined that it just never, it wasn't something that we felt good about. I have to go to sleep at night knowing that this was something that I've put in a good, honest day's work. And I think more and more people, something that's worthwhile. And I think that, young entrepreneurs get that. They've been raised, and they should have been raised with that sense of idealism. If you're going to do something with meaning and worth. And why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we strive to do something better? Right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And so when defining your target audience, how many attributes do you think a business should be looking at, and which are the most important?
Would these be the archetypes that you were talking about as well before? Because I remember you saying that it's probably easier to find out what kind of archetype you are, and so that way you can better understand how to operate your PR.
So we actually don't choose. We don't work on attributes so much as we work on values.
Yep.
So and we work on 3 top values. So we'll look at the top 3, and sometimes we'll look at 4 or 5, but usually the top 3 values. And those top 3 values are associated with particular archetypes. And we let the values choose the archetype. I think if you choose your archetype, everybody's going to want to be Superman. And that's kind of working at it on the top way down. But if you choose your values, and in the end, certain values are associated with certain archetypes, those values will choose the archetype that you are. And from that archetype, you can build out a really well-rounded brand character.
Fantastic. So could you give us an example of how you've taken the archetype and used that to build out a marketing strategy or
Sure.
content?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have done some work with a tech entrepreneur who's created and launched products that are in the billions of dollars. Yeah, I know. And he's an awesome, awesome guy. Just very, also, he fled Iran. Talk about somebody whose values really, really influenced his life. He fled Iran as a kid, or as an adolescent, and he remembers being on the phone and making a joke that was kind of anti-government, and his mother grabbed the phone, slammed it down, and said, "You don't know what you've just done. They're listening to us. They're listening to us, and now they will think that we are out to get the government." And it wasn't long after that they fled because the walls were closing. So when he came to Canada, he made the decision that he really wanted to stand for freedom of expression. So everything that he's done has been about that. So when we had him choose his values, I mean, there are lots of ways you can go out. You can go out in very earnest manner. You can go out, you could go out 1,000 different ways. But what we discovered with him was that he has the attributes that really mattered to him included fun. Like having fun at everything that he did mattered, and being a rebel, going against the system, whatever the system is, really mattered to him as well. And out of those the values that he stood for, we found this kind of tricksterish almost archetype that was playful. So rather than coming out
Not
and
Superman.
say, "You must be," yeah, exactly, not Superman, but "you must care about this," his whole method was about letting people, like, A, discover it, but also B, using comedy to discover it. And so we were able to kind of deliver things that made it very fun and very
Enjoyable
enjoyable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, when we get coverage, we just did something with The Guardian with him, and there's a bunch of other stuff that's coming out around him. And that's not to say that he'll be funny. And, well, yeah, he's pretty irreverent, right? But we've built the brand that way so he can kind of get away with it. Whereas, not everybody, you be who you are. That's who he is. I'm not going to squash him. And I'll say, you be you. I'm not going to let you not be you. You be you.
Are you able to share the brand?
Well, sure. The particular brand is Just 10. That's one of his brands, but the Frederick Garmani is the CEO, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful man. But I should share with you the other one as well. You too,
So
Sarah.
is that Just 10 ad-free private social network?
Yes, that's right. So I'll share the video that we did. Now, what I have to give you a disclaimer, because somebody went out and put it on Reddit without just saying, "Hey, everybody, this is really funny," which is the wrong thing to do on Reddit. So we had all kinds of love until that, and then we had the Reddit community kind of turned on us because you never
really?
tell people what to think on Reddit.
Yeah.
But YouTube, Sarah, Just 10. Let me see if I can send you this. So
Well,
we have a series of videos.
At least you guys, it sounds like you had a lot of conversation from Reddit, which is...
We did.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Hang on. So, but you're going to see more dislikes than likes. But it really was very well received by a great many people. So I'm going to send you two links. One is for the Scientastic, the one that won the Regional Emmy Award, and below that is an ad.
So it's almost as if, going back to the example that you gave earlier about how defining that client's archetype, you were able to progress with PR and marketing from there.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like basically finding out what the CEO or who the founder is like, and what he's like as a person, and what he believes in, and the reasons for why he believes in those things.
Yeah, we do a lot of work on what we call the origin story. Lots of times people don't really know why they do what they do, and we try and help them find that piece out, because that's actually critical. It's critical to why you do. So I have a couple of different origin stories. It depends on what piece of my work that you're looking at. But for example, I can tell you that when I was a kid, when I was about 12, 13, my dad ran what was considered to be one of the best almost amusement parks. You wouldn't be familiar with it, but in Canada it was kind of revered, and throughout North America it was called Ontario Place, and the Queen came and opened it up, and I mean it was a super big deal. Yeah, and so we got to meet, the heads of state, and we got to meet the Queen, and we got to do all of these and celebrities who would come in and perform there, and it was a really enchanted upbringing. And then there was a terrible scandal. And at 13, there was media, I guess I was 12 actually, there was media camped out in front of my door making these terrible accusations about my father and about the whole of the team at Ontario Place. And I had to go to school every day with our name like on the front page of the paper, and with my dad, in media reports on television. And as much as my mother and father tried to shield us from it, kids can be very cruel. Perhaps you knew that. And it didn't matter what they tried to hide from us. Our shame was just brought into my school by kids' parents who wanted to show me what kind of person they thought my dad was, because some media entity had decided this or was reporting on this. And in the end, my dad was exonerated. He had not done at first what they thought he had done, and there were people within the organization who had done terrible things, and they were found out, and it was all dealt with accordingly. But it was a horrible thing to completely lose your voice and have your story shaped and told by somebody else altogether. Yeah. And I vowed at that age that would not happen to me, that I would always find a way to be the one who would tell my story. And I think that's why I do what I do, right? It's a calling to me. It's a calling to me to right an injustice, because I know what it's like to have no voice and to be unjustly branded as something. And there are so many other much greater injustices in this world than just being, 12. People who don't have clean water. Right in Canada, we have people who live in contaminated parts of the world. So we always start with the origin story, because there is something in your life that makes you, and it may not be when you were a kid. It could be something relatively innocuous, but it's something that you had your aha moment, and it informed everything that you do. It could come out of a terrible problem that you need to solve for somebody you love, or for yourself, right? And some of them are quite small, but quite often, even those small problems, there's something much deeper beneath it. It's never so much about wanting to make a better pair of pantyhose. There's usually something that really needs that something that happened to you that you need to do something to make something right. And your worst day is probably your worst moment is probably your best story.
Right. And so is there a process to discovering the origin story that you go through?
We do. Yeah, we have a whole process. In fact, I'm doing an online class in the coming few months. Yeah, and it'll be about that, and it'll be how do you find your archetype and all of those things. Yeah, because a lot of the people that we work with, because the work is very intense, they have bigger budgets, but we love doing startup work, and we've helped startups along the way. We just can't always do that because they don't have the funds. So what we wanted to do is to kind of create something that would help startups.
How can
that would be fantastic.
How can founders or entrepreneurs join that class that you're
so right now the best bet is to go to reimaginepr.com and to join up with our newsletter. And then in the coming 2 or 3 months, by September, my hope is that we'll be launching then. We just have so many projects we're working on, but we're trying to make this a priority because we get asked all the time, and it's a resource and I do workshops as well where I go into companies and help people come to that place. So I fly all over and do, all over and do workshops.
We'll be sure to include a link within the guide to that. Yeah.
Great.
Definitely.
Okay.
So just going through the steps, so we get a clear picture of the process of forming these values. You'd say step 1 is the origin story. Then out of the origin story, you then discover the values. Is that right?
I would say it depends, really. I mean, sometimes people have a clear sense of their origin story. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you start with the values. we don't have a hard and fast. I really look at the individual, and we try and see how receptive they are to all of this and what we need to do. We've worked with some of the most successful business people in the world, and sometimes you have to get past a little bit of skepticism first. So sometimes we'll take them through more traditional ways and get them into that place, because it's a very vulnerable thing to do, to get down to that place where you really understand your story, or to even connect on what your values are, because we're not asking you just to throw things out. We're asking you to really think about what you stand for and who you are in the world. So I would love to say that it's a step-by-step and it's a paint by numbers, but I think it does vary person to person.
Yeah, fantastic. And so we're going to have a look at the Just 10. We're going to play that.
Is that the video?
There's something about pap tests that aroused me. Must be the stirrups. Anyways, I went clubbing on Saturday night, and I met
sure you don't get to the end or
guy.
you spoil the
Unfortunately,
surprise.
he had herpes in both places, so pass. This lady garden is STI free. And obviously, I'm not Snow White. The only thing I got from that story was a fear of dwarves. But I think the act of lovemaking should be sacred, caring, and worth the $200 I charge for it. I'm kidding. But seriously, a man in my life, or some part of me, would be nice. But not someone I have to impress all the time. As far as I'm concerned, a push-up bra is just a straitjacket for my boobs. Anyways, Dad, how are you?
That's funny. Okay.
Some things should be private. Say what you want on just10.com or download the app on your mobile phone.
Oh, and my pap test? It came back clear. Woo-hoo! I'm going out!
And the idea was just to do something, because you can tell people, privacy, it matters, context matters, but we wanted to do just something fun that's
great. Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that we've got a few others that are rolling out that are fun too.
So did you develop the script for that?
Yeah. My husband and I wrote the script. My husband oversees all of our creative, and I oversee all of the PR, and then we both work on both sides of it. And we love working together. We are so lucky. We have been together 20 years, and our favorite thing is we live together and we work together, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So
that's
we're
perfect.
really lucky.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really inspiring.
And so your husband's name?
His name is Mike Erskine Kelly, and he's awesome.
Mike Erskine.
He's an awesome writer, and just a hell of a good guy.
Susan, thank you very much for today's hangout. I'm sure our audience have learned a lot, and so have we, about what we discussed today. Really understanding what the company believes in, and having the company understand what their clients believe in, and that's almost primary to really understand how you should be doing your marketing, and figuring out what the archetype is for yourself, for the company, and how the company should act.
Yeah, I think that's a good encapsulation, and thank you so much for having me on. It was really fun speaking with both of you, David and Bobby. You're great.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah.
Thanks.
Stay in touch, and we'll hopefully do this again.
Great, that would be fun.
All the best with the future projects.
Thank you very much. Same to you.
So to find out more information, simply go to reimaginepr.com. The link is below. We have shown a clip of that at the start of this hangout, and we'll be featuring this discussion on veloso.com, a video production network, and we look forward to seeing you all at our next hangout. Thank you again, David. Thank you, Susan, for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you,
Right.
Susan.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.